Mahalo for the final time. We are Maebashi Witches, episode 12. And oh my god, I honestly procrastinated a little bit on watching this solely because I'm not mentally prepared for it to be over. I've absolutely adored this series. This has been probably my favorite review I've done thus far. Not that I've done that many, but I'm so glad I committed to this series. I'm so glad that I was like, this one's gotta be good. It looks like it's gonna be good. It's gotta be good, and it's even better than I thought. I've really enjoyed the ride, so I'm glad to take you guys with me for one last ride for season one. Let's put it that way. Picking up where we left off, we have the girls confronting Eiko, and something that I don't think I said anything about before, but the passage of time has been quite interesting in this show. For specific reasons, I assume that most of it has taken place in summer because this is a summer airing anime and they wanted to kind of promote that aspect of it. This anime, technically speaking, I believe has some of its budget being that they want to spotlight the actual city of Maebashi and like increase tourism there, despite this series not having too much exclusively Maebashi things happening in it. But I do like the idea that this is like summer in Maebashi, and that if we could ever potentially get, I don't know, another season, that they do a different actual season. Like, here I'm getting the impression with their outfits that they're in like maybe fall, perhaps. Like Kyoka looks like she is set up for the winter. She's like, girl, it's freezing out here. I got a nice big old sweatshirt and a beanie. Maybe it's just me and I can't wear beanies unless it's absolutely frigid outside or I overheat. But I'm like, girl, you're making me hot wearing that outfit. But maybe it's also because it's like a bajillion degrees where I am. But I guess like the time gap we had with Eiko taking over, I assume it's moved into fall. And they did like it implied that they kind of wrapped up in August with all of like the festivals and like that whole vacation month in Japan. But I like the idea that they could potentially do a winter sequel. Anyways, let's actually talk about the episode. Let's not keep theorizing about all the seasons I deserve after this one. We have a little bit of a bounce back to explain how they got to the whole cliffhanger we had last episode, being like, we're not here for the shop, we're here for our stuff. And that's it. Where they actually have a little powwow about being like, okay guys, what's our next move? What's our goal? We get one wish, what are we wishing for? And Yuana's like, let's just go back to the shop and like get our stuff and whatever and kind of have closure, but I don't actually really want to be a witch. There's not really much I actually want to accomplish as a witch. And then they also put forth this whole bit where it's like, are we really doing that good as witches? Like, we've been granting these wishes, but it seems like they've been doing more harm than good. And I was like, that's not true. That's not true. Eiko was the only potential, like, maybe you failed, maybe you didn't kind of situation. But I would say most everybody else that they've granted wishes for has been helpful. Like, I get that it's going in the direction of, like, it's got a little bit of the lesson of, like, the magic in your life is solving your own problems kind of deal. And I felt like that worked with the fact that these girls were granting, like, very baby wishes, but that also equal to the amount of energy and power they could have to put into the wishes in the first place. But, like, I disagree. And part of my disagreement is simply because I want the series to continue. I'm like, don't be like, we do more harm than good, let's not be witches. And I was like, no. I don't get a season 2 if you do stuff like that. So don't be saying that. I was a little worried that this series was going to conclude with them full on retiring, and I was like, well, then I don't get a season 2. I don't even get the potential of a season 2. Don't do that. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. I want magic. Don't be taking the magic out of my magical girly show. Don't do that. But I do think it's cute that they all ultimately agree that they're like meeting each other and coming together as a group has improved their lives to the point where they don't necessarily need magic to continue to improve their lives. Which I think is a valid point, and I think it's a great showcase of their character development because they have, throughout the season, abused their magic in one way or another in order to accomplish their goals, and then them learning how to better take care of themselves and not use magic as a crutch has been helpful for them. It's the growth of learning that when you do get that handicap, you learn that maybe the cheat code wasn't what you needed to betterment your life. So like I get what the development is. I get it, but also I like magic. Like I have a little bit of personal beef with series where they're like magic is bad or technology is bad, and I'm like, everything's not that bad in moderation, especially if it's fictional and you can just say that it's good if we put it in moderation. Let me have my magic. And then when last time we see my queen. Now, I was like very much glued to, as much as I was delaying watching the episode, I was reading the reactions from Japanese Twitter, and one person cited her name as being Nene. I don't know if that was in the credits and that's where they came up, or that's some kind of pun or like fandom name they've given her. But I saw a couple of people refer to her as, I need to remember the full title. It was like the Eternal Witch Nene or something, or like something about like the finalized witch Nene, realized witch Nene. The translations was kind of funky. I want to see more of her. If we get a season 2, or give me a prequel. Give me a prequel and explain this girl, because this cannot be the end of this queen. I like her a lot. I've had her for 5 minutes and I'm very attached. Anyways, back to the plot. We have this bit where Yuna does her little thing where she apologizes, but she doesn't quite know what she's apologizing for, but she just knows that she needs to apologize. And I'm glad that this doesn't, like, immediately solve the problem, because I'll be so for real with you on a personal level. If somebody just kind of started apologizing to me, but they didn't know what they did wrong, they're just like, I feel like I need to apologize, that would probably irritate me. Like, I feel like the value of an apology is people realizing what the mistake was, apologizing for that, and then promising to not do it again in the future or do better in the future. I feel like that's like the real value of an apology. And I do like that Yuna also states that like she's only apologizing for herself. Like, she's self-aware that there's a level of selfishness, which I like. Because I like that they have a character like Yuna who is kind of showcased as ditzy, which they'll be categorized as ditzy as far as like Japan will put it, but it's kind of shows a little bit of neurodivergency there. But I like the fact that she has this kind of neurodivergent showcase of herself, but is also somewhat self-aware, where she's like, I am trying to take responsibility, but at the same time I also know that I'm not perfect. And I don't know, I really like the balance that they handle with her, because I feel like there's a balance to be had with these characters where it's like they're just ditzy and they just don't understand anybody's feelings because they're a ditzy character. But I feel like there's just a little bit more responsibility with the writing of Yuna's ditzy thing. It's not that she's just kind of a ditzy, silly, Genki protagonist for the sake of like comedy, or that's just how they've always written kind of pink leads in a lot of shows. I feel like there's so much more depth to the way that she is. And again, as somebody who is not necessarily a big fan of Genki protagonists throughout history, I'm looking at you, Love Live. I do very much value how much they've put into Yuna. And then there's Kerope, where, again, he's stayed on this sort of level of being like, is he an antagonist? Is he an ally? Like, what is he at the end of the day? And him going on this rant where he's like, I'm offended you guys see me as an enemy. I'm like, it's so deserved though, dude. And as far as what we've gained, and again, the information that we have about Kerope, as far as I'm aware, the most definitively information we have is the theory of the voice actor that plays Kerope. Because remember, voice actors are not the writers. Voice actors can have their own personal theories for how they feel about characters, and they could have a little bit of background insight from the like main team and might have discussion, but typically they aren't like the voice of reason. The only people who can really decide what a character is the writer. But he did state that for Kerope, he kind of is this antagonistic entity that doesn't like necessarily super care about the gang. And I feel like that's been kind of spot on, because he's kind of a bad guy, but he's like not a bad guy, he's just a self-serving guy, and I feel like that's pretty accurate. I feel like that's reigned true the entire time. Kerope has kind of been this character who's like not quite a plot twist mascot villain, as we've had many. I'm not going to name series because I feel like those are going to be major spoilers for like every other series. I think the only one I can actually cite that people are not going to get mad at me for is like Madoka. But like, he doesn't feel like a twist. It feels like it's been very obvious the entire time that he's just been kind of self-serving. And I feel like, at least for what they cover in this season, that's all they really want to say about him. They're just like, he's just a self-serving guy who just kind of wants to keep the witch shop running. And that's just all he really cares about. He might have like developed some fondness for the team, but it's not like that deep. But it'd be really cool if like in future seasons, that there absolutely will be, of course, it'd be nice if like he does actually grow to really care about the characters, and we face some kind of antagonistic force outside of Maebashi, and he like makes the choice to stand with them despite him probably always being more on the like, I just have an ends to a means kind of thing going on. That would be kind of cute, but also that would be a not season 1 kind of situation. He does ultimately grant them the ability to wear their outfits as they have requested, that while they can't, now they've learned they can't get their stuff back because the stuff that they had is just obliterated by Eiko changing the entire which realm. So they're like, can we get a photo though? And Ketopei's like, you know what? You know what? Yeah, I kind of like you girls. I'll give this one to you on the house. Like, thanks, Ketopei. What an angel. And then we have Eiko get upset, where she's like, you guys are just coming in here doing whatever you want. You're all happy and smiley, but you guys aren't taking like the fact, you're not taking it seriously that you've really screwed me over. You've caused me problems. And I don't like that you're not taking, like, you're just being all very flippant about it. Which, fair to a little bit of a degree. Like, that's a little fair. Like, I would say that having these people, like, come in here and be like, tee hee hee, we're so happy, woo, and then you're sitting here miserable, I could see that being like, I can see that pissing her off. I can see why that would make her annoyed. But at the same time, she did steal the shop. So, like, the fact that they're being as nice as they are, no, it's a little fair. Like, they could be way worse. I will say part of me kind of wanted there to be a little bit more drama here. I kind of wanted a little bit more battle of the bands kind of thing. This whole episode is definitely very much like happy ending. And it's just kind of like, like you just take a deep breath and you're like, the drama really was everywhere else. And really last episode, which is probably why this is such a very like denouement kind of ending. But I wouldn't have minded a little bit more drama. But I do like how the girls handle the next part where they're like, you know what? That's so fair. Like, they're really giving her so much room where they're like, at the end of the day, yeah, if you want, get pissed off at us. You were our first person that we granted a wish for. And you not feeling satisfied as a customer for being our first, like, kind of trial run of a customer is valid. And I'm like, it's a little bit valid. It's not a lot of it valid, it's a little bit valid, though. And her just kind of, like, being like, I don't understand why you guys are being so nice, which has been kind of the formula for this series, is it's probably been my favorite nuanced version of kill them with kindness as, like, kind of the weapon that they fight with. Other shows, I feel like, have a really hard time juggling between, like, when somebody needs to be taken down as an enemy, or, like, if we sing a happy little song and hold hands, everybody's healed. I feel like series very much struggle with that, especially if it's a series aimed for younger audiences, because you have a lot less room for nuance. I like that they're actually tackling this in this show, where we do have it with a more mature tone than necessarily, I don't know, like Steven Universe. We have more room to sit here and actually say, people suck, but also there is a level of how we can handle this with the power of kindness and with the power of love and listening and talking, but also being like, you might have sucked a little bit. And I don't know, I felt like I liked it. But at the same time, the series does not have anybody trying to colonize planets, so stakes are different. I also like that we get a little bit more information where we see the first explanation to what's going on, which is the other thing that in terms of like an apology, I think the most important thing to happen, which luckily Eiko does it instead of them having to ask, but like probably explaining why you're pissed at them might help out. Because I don't think the girls fully understand why you were big Angie. And she does. She explains that like she wanted to be a doctor, but implies that there was more of a backstory as to why she wanted to be a doctor. And she got the motivation to choose that path. And then she tried to study and it wasn't really working out for her. And she got very frustrated that these guys pushed her to make that choice and she felt like it was just a wrong choice. And this entire time she feels like all she does is make really wrong choices. And again, talking about, like, the nuance of it, I like the responses that they give her, where they're like, we see, like, how the misplaced motivation and everything and pushing you to this choice may have been, as you perceive, detrimental to yourself. It may have not been the right choice. But there's also, like, we're not perfect. As well as the fact that they're like, okay, girl, though, like, be for real. As much as we shouldn't compare people, it's gonna be impossible not to compare people. Like, literally bringing up every piece of nuance for each of the characters. Where it's like, you gotta own a little bit of that yourself, queen. As well as, like, there's a little bit of check your privilege, girl. You come from a more affluential family. You're not, like, completely drowning in nothing. And we're not completely responsible for the choices you make and the failures you have. But at the same time, whatever you do, we are still here willing to encourage you and willing to be there for you and cheer you on and help you in the ways that we can. Versus instead of, like, you know, obviously just having them magically solve the goal of just being a doctor. And I just like that there's so much nuance put into this conversation. And there's a level of, like, everybody's got to take a little bit of accountability where it's due. And it's so nice that it connects back to everybody. All of the girls talk about the different things that they themselves have learned and then, like, are kind of pushing that lesson onto Eiko. I like how it's handled. And then we get this beautiful number for her. This song I really liked. The garden's beautiful. Also, if I had a nickel, for in this weekend, where one color may have started one way and it ended up with being an iridescent version of that color, I'd have 2 nickels. The other one being K-pop Demon Hunters aired this weekend. You should watch that movie too. Nonetheless, I do love the iridescent rose. Very pretty. And then, of course, in the song, we get the backstory for Eiko, which I like. I kind of like this dive into her character where we, in just a few images alone, see what her backstory was, where she got injured and had a doctor in her life. And that recovery with that doctor inspired her to want to be a doctor. So it wasn't just like, I want to be a doctor because doctors make money or something along those lines. She does have some backstory as to why she wants to do it and why maybe the failing hurts her more. There's always the potential that, like, she has so much respect for this doctor and feeling like she can't walk in their footsteps might be something that really bugs her. And it just adds to the stress. I feel like throwing in these few shots added a lot of value into her story. I also really like the mixed media of her being in 3D and then having a 2D younger version of herself and her being like, you know, being encouraged by her younger self and not feeling shame to the younger version of her. I think it's really nice. I just genuinely like the shots that they put out here. Per usual, they just pop off visually in this show. And the song does what it's gotta do. It's always the magical friendship musical number that has her being like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have behaved the way I did, you guys were just trying to help me out, you know, the normal stuff. She reached the conclusion she needed to. And then we get the rose again, which I've really liked the way, and I just probably should research more on flower language because it's played a significant role in how the story's been told. Because I love that before, as I talked about the one flower I do know a little bit about being the rose, her having the impossible but also fake blue rose at the beginning, and that honestly being really decent foreshadowing for her being like this like usurper witch, kind of like the false witch that takes over their thing and just all the applications, because again the blue rose does have some negative connotations to it. And then now her having another miraculous rose, but in the case of this actually being a full-on like iridescent debatably glass rose, straight up ain't real. And there's like no negative, there's not the negative stuff that comes with blue roses, so I like that. I like her impossible hopeful rose once more. I like it. The symbolism has been very pleasing. And we see her transform back into OG Eiko form. And as I see her come back, I'm a little sad that it doesn't seem like she's going to join the team for the way that they handle the rest of the episode. Which is a bummer. I feel like she would have been a fun little Six Ranger addition to the group. But it is what it is. I don't think if they continue the series, I doubt we'll never ever see her again. But I also don't think she's going to be a main character from the way that they leave it off. I do like that we showcase our little train car once more. I feel like it's it being part of Eiko's original music video, and then it being what they blasted back in here, and now it's what she's using to depart from the store and go back to her regular life. I think it's cute. I like the janky little symbolism, and then the field's also just really pretty with the iridescent roses. And we see her off as we now have to figure out what we gonna do next. I will say I appreciate this scene with every fiber of my body. I do like that if there's one thing that she's taken away from this, the one thing that she's moving forward with, is that she confronted her mom. I'm glad she did. I'm always up for a parental confrontation is not something I will say no to. I love that she's like, hey mom. Well, I'm glad the mom's apologizing, first of all, but I like that she sticks up for herself and she's like, hey mom, I want to be a doctor, and I'm gonna need you to stop being terrible. She did not say it that way, but that's how I'm gonna say it. I like her being like, listen, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm pursuing, and I'm gonna need you to not sit here and contribute to my anxiety for once. And go off, queen. Go off, queen. As you should. As you should. And for the most part, I think people will be not super... I think there are gonna be people who feel like, and this series has been doing this, where they don't punish characters very severely for their actions. And obviously, Eiko thus far has done the most villainous actions thus far in the show. I think some people will think that she didn't get punished enough for it, but I think all things considered and the attitude this series wants to have, I think this is a good enough resolution for me. I think this is fine enough. She could have been a member of the team though. In the meantime, Ketope is like, wait, were you guys like for reals about not wanting to be witches? Because it'd be kind of cool if you were, which I'm glad this happens because I was like, I don't know, are you guys actually committing to not being witches? Are you guys being so for real? Could you be less for real about that? Could you guys actually want to be witches, please? Please for me? Like, I'm Keto Pay. I want them to still be witches. And he, like, bargains it. He's like, okay, but, like, what do I gotta do to get you girls to be witches? And I do love that Azu's like, you better beg for us. Up until this point, Mr. Sassy Pants, you've been riddle this and snide that, but I need you to actually admit that you want us and you need us to do whatever it is that your crafty little plan is. And then some humility would be nice because you've been a little rude, sassy thing. You did make them all forget for allegedly a couple of months, going from August to some point where they're going to be wearing these level of heavy clothing for the cold weather. It's been a duration that you put them through amnesia. And I didn't like that. In fact, hurt my feelings personally, and I'd like an apology. Anyways, it is a cute little thing where they do the little Maebashi witches hand motion. It's super adorable. Azu's like, I don't want to do it, but then it's like, you're doing it, girl. You're part of the team. You're one of us, and it's very cute. And they are like, yeah, we'll keep being witches. And I'm like, good, because that's what I wanted. That's the only thing I wanted to hear, because if you guys didn't want to be witches, we wouldn't get a season 2. And then we have we go to a commercial break, which I do like that they sit there and they're like, epilogue for the second half of this, which is good. And it's kind of how I predicted it. A lot of anime, especially for their final episodes, seem to break up the first half of the episode, concluding whatever major, like, finale action was going on, and then the second half is epilogue. I like that better than the formula where they spend, like, only 5 minutes at an epilogue and they really drag out the final battle, because I want some time for the epilogue. I want some time for the feels, so I like that. I like the spacing for it. And so the girls meet up, and at first I was like, why is Azu skinny? They're in public. Why is she skinny? But the implication here is that their magic is to a strong enough point that they can use it more readily outside, which I'll get to what I actually feel about this, because it gets a little confusing. They do address it a little bit when they go to eat together, and Azu talks about how she uses it when they're in, like, public spaces, and she has enough energy now, and they've just gotten better at being witches, and she can do it, but she will show her true self with everybody else. And it doesn't seem like she's doing any severe dieting at this point. She's happy to eat a normal quantity. And I will say, if we get a second season, I want to see them put far more effort in committing to having her be her true self. I genuinely think that for as much as you're trying to have a whole plot line about fat phobia and lookism and all that, you do need to commit to having a character be a bigger size than, like, twig skinny if you want this to be compelling. Because if a series is not willing to take that leap, then you're just contributing to the problem than you are necessarily fixing it. I say that. In the meantime, each of them talk about how their lives have gotten better and the actions that they're willing to take to get it better. They talk about how they're still using magic, but thank God they have this nice, like, work-life magic balance where you have somebody like Choco being like, I'm using my magic to make sure, like, my mother's well rested and to help out with chores, but I'm not using it to, like, keep doing the time stuff that was absolutely draining her. We learned that Mai, in her own way, has continued to grow to her account to the point where she's reached 1 million followers, and that she and Yua are finally going to meet each other on more equal footing, and that she's grown enough to handle that. Now, I will say, obviously, if you've watched the episode, you know that a lot of the segment that we're watching, at some point of this segment is a dream. Stuff starts being false. I wasn't sure where that was, if the entirety of them talking this in, like, the second that it came back from commercial break, if all of that is part of Yuina's dream. I would imagine that where things got ridiculous would be where it starts to be a dream and where the rest of it was true, because I could believe that Mai hit 1 million followers and that she's having a conversation with Yuina, and I think it's really practical with what was happening with Choco and Azu. I think when they get to the food court, it's the most ridiculous, but again, all of it could have been a dream. I'm not quite sure, but, like, everything that starts happening in the food court gets to, like, crazy silly billiness, where I'm like, I'm suspecting that things are a little, like, I was like, okay, are we sure? Are we sure about that? Not this part, though. Not the first thing. Like, I believe the revelation where they're like, big VTuber was revealed to be a creep and he's going to jail. That I can believe. That was believable. And fortunately, they do confirm that, if anything they do confirm outside of Yuina's dream, they're like, that was definitely true. We don't know about the rest of the gang and their personal problems and stuff, but at least that was true. I also think this is true, where they say that Eiko's had trouble with the previous guests and their wishes didn't work out. And we get revisited by the girl with unrequited feelings for a taken guy, which again, as much as Eiko may have not had like the nicest way of resolving that problem, I still don't know what in the world you would actually do in a nice way to resolve that problem, because girl, he's taken and you are just gonna ruin things by by confessing. And the series is like, dang, that is a pretty trolley situation kind of thing going on there. That's why we didn't answer it. We just saw that she revisited the shop. But then they say stuff like Kyoka, despite being a high schooler, has become mayor, and I was like, that cannot be true. I was like, that part is ridiculous. Like, the second they said that, I was like, the city voted a high schooler to be the mayor. Can you even legally run for mayor under a certain age in Japan? I feel like you can't. I feel like there's gotta be an age. Like, I feel like most countries, for any kind of governing body, they have an age requirement, unless it's, like, dynastic. I was like, surely she couldn't have become mayor. That's goofy silly. And then, like, in public, in the food court, Yuana pulls out a magical manju, and they ride it like a UFO across the city as they're about to go to their big public concert. And I was like, okay. They do say hi to Eiko, which is cute. I assume that since the manju thing has to be part of the dream, but like, it'd be nice if they are checking in on her and how she's doing. And then we see this shot where they're all like about to perform at this really cool concert, and I think it's so silly that they did this little red herring as the this was the screenshot that they had as the preview for the next episode, where they do that little watercolor design. But this being part of the dream, that's such a sneaky little red herring of them. They be doing that to us. They pull a fast one on us just one last time. I'm on to you. But of course, Yuna wakes up. We do get the confirmation that this was true, and I think that's fair enough. I think they genuinely don't want to have to do, like, this series I don't feel like would want to get to the level of dark of, like, having a creepy guy, like, go after Kyoka and then have to handle it. Like, I don't feel like this series is quite, like, Wonder Egg priority level drama, so I wouldn't imagine that they really would address it, but it scared me for a minute, because I was like, how far is this series willing to go? But it seems like this is them putting a bow on this plot line. I think this is them being like, and the creep was gone. And it hurts. It hurts for a bit to hear, like, Kyoka say that I really regret not saying anything and I should have stuck up because it sounds like there were other victims after me and whatnot. But I do like that the game is like, girl, do not victim blame yourself here. At the end of the day, you went through something very disgusting and very traumatizing, and I like that. I like that they said what needed to be said there. I think that was very important to make those distinctions. And then lastly, just to kind of end it off on a happy little note, Yuna's like, we have sung on behalf of a lot of other people. Let's sing for us. And while I won't say that this is my favorite song by any means, I really like it visually and a lot of this direction they do. Again, I've got to reward this series and give credit where it is due, that they've done a unique stage for pretty much every song. I'm so happy that they didn't just reuse the same assets every time. Again, this series has a lot of budget behind it, which I'm imagining is coming from the fact that they're getting funded by a video game company, as well as the tourism for Maebashi probably put in a little bit of money for the pot, in the same way that something like Zombieland Saga, I believe, also had some tourism element that helped funded that. I think it allows these really cool series to get made. And the one side is that they typically lose that budget if they do get a second season, but I'm going to appreciate the first season. I love the stage that they get. You won't have me complaining about a water stage and a bright blue sky. I love some good water and some blue. I love that they have all these allusions to all the previously sung songs with each of the characters. I also love at this one that we obviously have our model from that particular episode thrown into the frame. You see it for half a second, but there's so much detail in it. I love that we go back with Kyoka and Choko's song, as well as like seeing like kind of the younger kids in the frame, as well as the flower that was represented in the song, which, is that a forget-me-not? I'm so bad. This is why I gotta learn the flower languages. But I love this. It's so clever. We see Mize and just like have that reference back and seeing the characters grow from it. And just having this whole, like, it's the team and we're all here and it's all cute and it's what it needed to be. I do think that for whatever they do for like their final season, because obviously this is gonna get more seasons, let me stay Delulu. I still think they should end with a theme song, and they do the theme song, but obviously they clearly didn't want to do the theme song for their final dance number because they're saving it for the finale of the series, honestly. And then we get to see each of them kind of... I think it's interesting that we see younger Mai and younger Yua here. But we also get to see the others, and I like that it showcases them in a happier place from where they've grown. But I think this again leaves the door open that like they're not at their final, or well, I mean, form is kind of not the right term here when I'm using the picture of Azu, but their true happiness and their true final character development is not reached. We still see her like on her bed, we still see her indoors, but we see her happier than she was before. It's great to see like Kyoka is a little bit happier. I think hers is visually harder to showcase her doing better. We do see Choco happier at home, and as well as letting her have some sweets is a nice little detail. And then, of course, Yuna on her bridge back home with her little disposable camera. And then I just like this shot. I thought it was really cool. I liked the blue of the stage, and it just like the reflection of the characters. I just thought that the stage was really pretty and it sparked joy. As well as, again, you see like the vines and stuff, and specifically the blue roses once more on the stage, just to have that nice callback to them, A, being like a flower shop, as well as like the first wish that they had to grant. I do also want to point out for the stages too. All of these different like subsequent stages, if you haven't noticed, all represent the songs that they've sung thus far in the series, because we have obviously Aiko's stage being this one with like the thorny roses. We have the cactus one. We move into, God, I don't know what flower that is, but the one for Yua. And then finally the one for Kyoka and Choco. And each stage kind of flows into each other. I also like that there's two waterfalls flowing in to the Choco Kyoka stage. I find that quite nice because it's two of the characters. I think there's like such clever design, and again, a blink and you miss it moment. The detailing is phenomenal. And then we just get this one last shot where we get a bunch of bubbles of the memories, and we just see the girls, and then of course our signature train in the background. And then we get the little, our one disposable shot where Yuna is out of film. Call back to the first episode where she ran out of film and Ketope helped her out. And then we see that these guys are back on track, continuing their witch duties, really setting up this series, or at least keeping the door open for a sequel, which has me happy. Like, I feel like the one thing that I will appreciate about this episode not being overly dramatic or like too intense is that if they do have subsequent seasons, especially if they have multiple, I do think they have room to up the drama. Because I imagine that's something, like, this happens with a lot of series where you have to keep upping the ante every season and adding more stakes and higher drama in order to, like, push emotional boundaries for people and just, like, kind of power scale up, which can be the folly of some series. But I think that they have the drama scaled to a certain point here. It's scaled down enough that subsequent series can really like go harder. There's more room to bring up the drama, but I also think that you're gonna really need to come up with some creative ideas for season 2. But I also think it'd be really cool if they expand the world. I'd love to see them like associate with other witches. I'd love to see them push Maebashi as a town more into the franchise too, since that again is one of the main goals of the series. I would love to see more. I'm really happy. I think there's a lot of open doors for this. And I just, oh God, I'd love to come back. I'd love to come back and see these guys. I also, again, would love to see this air in a different season, just to see, like, what if we had a Christmas-themed one? Or what if we had, like, a fall-themed one? Or we had the spring theme. Even though the spring theme kind of tied in with the summer theme here, I just love to see it, like, I like it when we have nature seasons. They make me happy. And then we get this one last shot of their different flowers, which I thought was incredibly cute. The flower theme lives on. And then I do like that they played the Maebashi theme for the ending, and then they just kind of do a bunch of screenshots throughout the show. I thought that was really sweet. Little memory lane. I had a little bit, I cried a little bit. A little cry. Just a little cry. And then finally, we have our after credit scene because, of course, how could they end this series without a little bit of a dramatic after credit scene? Which I like that Ketope is like, guys want a cheeky little after credit scene? You get nothing, but then we do get something, which this technically speaking was somewhat spoiled because again, the voice actor for Ketope basically said this, where he stated that he believes that Ketope is just the embodiment of Mappo, that he is like quite literally just Mappo. And I think that's really like in a more literal sense explains that instead of him just being like a being that's an avatar for Mappo. He's literally filled with Mappo. That's why he got fatter when they got more Mappo. He genuinely just was like, I'm actually storing the Mappo inside of my little cartoonish body because I am quite literally like, I imagine he's probably got something at him that's the center of the Mappo, kind of like maybe like an orby thing that sucks in the Mappo like a magnet. I don't know. I imagine that's how it works, but like he really just be a bag of Mappo. And again, if they're gonna give us a cheeky after credit scene, does that mean there's a sequel? I really, really hope, though, genuinely, like, obviously, if this does very well in Japan, it will get a sequel. I've really enjoyed it. I haven't heard too much buzz on the English side of things, but I definitely know in the circle of people that I've talked to, and obviously you guys have expressed how much you enjoy this series, and I just, again, hope it continues to get more and more attention because I've loved this series. It exceeded my expectations of enjoyment, and I'd just be so happy to see more. That being said, this is the wrap of my Maebashi Witches review for now. For now, I suppose. In the meantime, in terms of my scheduling on the channel, now that I've wrapped this up, I finally don't have an excuse to keep skipping out on pre-orca, so I will likely do a pre-orca review in the future that will be covering a chunk of what episodes currently exist at this date, and that will be something that replaces this. I need to look at what the next seasonal show is, because I would like to continue to do a, like, one seasonal 12-episode show alongside my Precure reviews. I don't want to dedicate myself to a full year series, which is why I'm not doing episodic reviews of Pre-Orca. But I've really enjoyed Maebashi Witches. All I know is if there's a show next season that really catches my eye and I want to do a weekly review for it, please don't have it be on the same day that Precure comes out. It absolutely destroys me that Precure comes out, like, Sunday morning, and that Maebashi Wishes comes out, like, I think it's evening. It came out in the evening in Japan, but both of it was like Sunday Japan. I can't be doing two reviews back to back. I need some show to be like, we air on like Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Help me out, I'm begging. But until next review, I can't wait to see you. Bye bye!